I'm Jeff Cook.
And I'm T.J. Wilson.
And this is Around the Circle.
I'm walking slowly, I'm taking my time. All I could talking is starting to rhyme. I'm letting go of lonely, letting go of strife. I just can't get enough of this beautiful life.
The Enneagram is a map of the human personality. It's a tool for navigating relationships, creates language for what motivates us, and helps us look at the way we look at everything else. Most importantly, the Enneagram is a mirror because sometimes you need help seeing yourself. My name is Jeff Cook. I'm a philosopher in Greeley, Colorado, and with me is T.J. Wilson, businessman, lover of theology, and Enneagram ninja.
Hello.
My man.
Hey.
We're joined again by the inimitable Kambrie Ross.
Hello.
Kambrie, as you all will know, is one of the best researchers of Enneagram insights in the world. And so we are thrilled to have her thoughts on relationships falling apart.
Because that's where I know.
That's where you shine, right?
The negative, the deep dark.
If you're going to go to a troubling, emotionally heavy topic, get yourself a 4, get you some insights.
A healthy 4.
Healthy 4, of course.
An unhealthy 4 will not be able to come out of their introspective self-interest to look at your problems.
Well, we're going to talk about when love is not returned. This obviously happens to us all in all the relationships that we experience. There will be times when the love connectedness that we truly desire isn't reciprocated, and each of the types deal with that in different ways. So today we're talking about 2 of the big ideas in Enneagram world, which is coping style and stress. And so these are going to overlap as we talk about our relationships and when we're not getting what we want out of our relationships. So
Sounds
that's
like
what I got.
It's going to be a really fun podcast.
So fun. No, it really is, actually. It's a lot of this stuff, before you say, you know what, maybe this podcast is not for me, because it's going to be depressing. Before you think that, before you leave, most of the material that I am coming with today is very encouraging.
Oh, good.
So
Fun.
Keep that in mind. I also want to correct myself when I said an unhealthy 4 will not be able to have space for that. I'm going to correct that and say go to a 4 that has the space for it, that has the emotional space for it. Because you could be a healthy 4 that's going through stuff and you don't have the space for it. That doesn't make you unhealthy. So
Sure.
Just had to.
That's fair. Yeah. Split that hair. Got to make sure.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, I'm going to start with the 6s. You guys down for talking first?
Starting with
about
6.
We never
6s?
start with 6s. That's fun.
Wow.
6s desire deep in their bones, folks to be faithful. There is something about the heart of a 6 that I imagine all of us do not like it when love is not returned. But just looking over the numbers, I really wanted to speak into 6s first and maybe spend some time here. This will be a great window, I should say, into love not being reciprocated and how somebody might showcase all of the stages of how that works. And I think you can see it clearly in the life of 6s. So to get into this, we're going to just look at quotes from folks who have responded from each of the types on what they do when they don't have love reciprocated, what rejection looks like, and perhaps advice that they give. And we're just going to comment on what we see. So starting with the 6s, what you got for us, Kambrie?
So 1 6 says, abandonment and rejection are really scary to me since I value loyalty so much. So it's honestly a little earth-shattering when someone doesn't reciprocate love if it's been communicated that it will. It takes a long time to work through.
What you hear there, TJ?
I like their use of the word earth-shattering because I think 6s in particular, it's like it is a really big deal. And I know that there's sort of an emphasis on romantic love for a lot of what we're talking about, but I think that's true for a lot of the relationships that 6s really invest time and energy in. And like seeing that play out in really close friendships when that love is lost, and that can be circumstantial. It can be like this person moved away, and just there's a separation in the relationship because of that, and I think it has a significant impact on sixes who so value loyalty, fidelity. They're looking for support, and so this is part of their support system that has now moved on.
Mm-hmm. That's why I heard there as well. Rejection can be about all sorts of stuff, but here rejection is about faithfulness. Mm-hmm. And noting that it's also a very emotional experience for this person. That's not always the case with the types in terms of how they experience rejection. It's not always going to be emotional, but it feels in this quote like it's a very emotional experience.
Right.
Yes, very much so. Well, and what you were saying, TJ, about the support system and how that's a part of their support system that has failed them. 2 sixes actually commented on that kind of support system in how they react to being rejected. 1 6 says, "It feels awful in the pit of my stomach. I seek comfort from others." And another says, "Feels like I'm not good enough. Look for others to be with." And so you see them trying to fill this gap of where their support system failed, and so they try to fill it.
Yeah.
Lots of earning language there as well, just worthy of note that sixes, in order to get what they want, will earn it. If it's the case that they can't earn the relationship that they want, that's the move into problem solving and stress.
Right. And that for sixes, they're in that emotional response triad of how they solve problems, and they will seek to explore and share their emotional place. This is an earth-shattering event, and they'll seek, like I like the seeking comfort from other people, and like drawing other people into it is part of the reaction of sixes. Is like this is how I feel about this, and I need someone to help carry that and also help validate my feelings about this situation.
I wonder as well if it's more of a 6 wing 7 move to do that, to go to other people in those situations, because there are also a couple sixes here that talk about withdrawing instead of moving towards other people. So 1 6 just said shame, withdrawal, self-loathing. And the other 6 said, I withdraw and need space. When healthy, then I can engage and pursue where the disconnect is. So I wonder if that other side of withdrawing would be 6 wing 5s.
Sure.
I don't know how to talk about that.
I would bet, and this is almost entirely based on my experience with my spouse, who's much stronger, and she is a 6 with a much stronger 5 wing than her 7 wing. She doesn't withdraw from me necessarily when other relationships are suffering, but she does have a tendency to withdraw from those people.
Gotcha. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. So she won't seek out the people that she's experiencing emotional distress with, but she will seek to share that like her emotional response comes to me a lot.
So it might be 2 sides of the same coin.
Right.
Where it's one of them's withdrawing from that person or from the source of the infidelity or rejection, and moving towards, on the other side of the coin, moving towards others. So it could, that makes sense.
Yeah. What I would assume theoretically would be that the 6 would want their feelings validated, their thoughts validated emotionally, as we said. But when that doesn't happen, their stress number is going to 3. So they're going to become more assertive, that people pay attention to them in their stressful situation. Yeah. But I like the idea that might be just a select few.
Yeah. It might also be to themselves.
Right.
Like they will feel more assertive on the inside. Perhaps that might not be right, but that's a possibility. Like their self-talk, if that makes sense.
Sure. I don't necessarily see, I guess it depends a lot on the health of the individual, but I don't necessarily see that assertiveness coming out in the midst of the problem solving. Like I feel like it's the next step. It's past the problem solving. So I would anticipate seeing more emotional response. Like a 6 experiences some kind of hurt, and then they want to share and have their emotions validated. And when that still isn't being fulfilled, the move into the 3 is actually past the emotional response. So it's getting things done. It's drawing attention to themselves. Like I think the drawing attention would be a much more unhealthy reaction typically, but I don't know that assertiveness would necessarily come in to aid the problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. I think, and this is something that we're going to do a lot of work on this in the future, but off mic, we've talked quite a bit about how our coping style is kind of a barrier. It's almost a wall to keep us centered. The coping style for the 6 is I want others' emotional response to validate how I'm feeling about the world. And that will be how they're trying to feel connected to others, establish faithfulness, who here is still reliable. If that breaks, you're going to go into a whole different type to use their tools. Mm-hmm. And that is the move. When you actually hit stress, you've hit stress when you're fundamentally approaching the problem in a different fashion. That's why our stress number can be so valuable. It's giving us other tools to use for problems that we've been trying to work out. Is it the case that with 6s, you move from pay attention to this problem to a posture of heart that would be more like a pay attention to me?
1 6 commented saying that when others don't reciprocate their love, they said, I get depressed. I will give chase for a little bit after being rejected because it's hard for me to accept, but then I'll move on. So it seems to me that right there, they're kind of saying, hey, pay attention to me. This isn't actually what you want. Kind of moving into that space a little bit, it seems.
And I would also say that for a lot of 6s, I would guess that if they had the time to really think about their answer to that question, it would be that paying attention to the problem is paying attention to me.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I suppose here's your stepping back side of things is we haven't brought in affect, but 6s will detach from relationships that aren't working.
Yep.
Just like 3s and 9s will. And so that might be just an extra measure there of all the movement that's taking place.
Yeah. I think that does happen after they have pushed back. So if they've pushed back and then it's still not working out and they're still not getting that loyalty or that love from the person, then they'll detach.
Bang. Did the 6s then, on the flip side, give advice to other 6s about how to navigate broken relationships?
That they did. And personally, I love, I feel like there's so much meat in this advice. It's gold, in my opinion. So if you are feeling rejected, listen up and bookmark this and save this episode because you're going to want to go back to it when you do feel rejected, if you're not right now. And I have a few, so I'm just kind of going to go through all of them because I think they're all good. 1 6 says, rejection isn't your fault. You aren't a fool for letting down your walls. This next 6 says, it's probably not as disastrous as you think, and you are not likely the problem. Be curious and open before making judgments. Another 6, you can find what you're looking for in friends and family until the right person comes along. I don't know when that is, and I can't give you a timeline, and I know that makes you anxious. I'm sorry. I wish love was more predictable and happened on a schedule too, but do not give up hope and live your life to the fullest as much as you can, even within your heartbreak. I'm always glad when things don't work out because I always see eventually why they didn't. Someday, I'm excited to see why they did work out. Maybe that's something you can think about, and I'm here for you. The next 6 says, your gut isn't lying to you. Another says, don't seek love for validation. Another says, don't settle, do your homework, know what your priorities are. No one is entitled to a chance, and you will get through this. The next 6, the final 6 says, chin up. There will be more opportunities. Not every person in your life is meant to stay.
I got lots of thoughts. You got thoughts?
It's just so encouraging. I just love it.
And I also think it's important to say that if you were 6 listening to this, part of what you're thinking right now is those people are speaking out of their own individual experiences, and it's different for the one that you're going through. And that's several different people that we're all saying about the same thing. So maybe there is some universality to what they're saying, and it does apply to you too.
I had a fantastic conversation with the captivating Joni Wilson this morning about how wrong the heart's message is commonly for 6s. It's commonly voiced as you are safe, that 6s need to hear you are safe. And she said this is entirely false. What 6s need to hear is you are enough. Ooh. And the idea that is just dripping out of all of these quotes is you have the strength to take this thing on. And that's what they want to hear when they're having real problems, is they want somebody to step into their life and say, no, you've got what it takes. And it just seemed to be, again, all over the language there. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to make up monikers for everybody, by the way.
Love it.
I love it. Here for it.
Well, you want to move to the 7s?
Let's do it.
We've set this sucker in motion. What do the 7s say about how it feels when others don't reciprocate their love?
The first 7 says, have feelings of disappointment and pain. I will surround myself with friends and keep moving on in life. And another 7 actually says pretty much that same thing. They say, I get hurt by rejection initially, but I can remind myself of who I am and move on to my next goal or task of my own pretty easily. I've been heartbroken a lot, and I've learned to not hold on so tight and to love myself.
Yeah, there's a 7s. Part of the way that they solve problems when they're faced with it is with a positive outlook. And here we have examples of people saying, yeah, I just move on. It's fine. I think that can be really healthy to say, this was a time and I'm going to move on from this now. It can also be a really good example of how 7s reframe in an unhealthy way, because they're essentially dismissing, they could be essentially dismissing the emotional impact and importance of that experience in order to move on from it.
That's what I hear also, is that there is an undercurrent there of damage, of hard life happening, and then there's the move.
Right.
And so this creates two things. One, it may have some solution there that you don't want to stay in that bad state of affairs forever. But on the flip side, and we all know this, you eventually, in order to be a whole person, you really do need to have done the hard work to bind up wounds, to confess what's gone terribly, and that still has, those places of relational problem, difficulty, hurt need to be addressed at some point, or else they can do damage.
Right.
Well, and a lot of people think or have this misconception that 7s don't feel things very deeply, especially on the lower half of the emotional spectrum. And this is a good place to mention that they do feel very deeply. And this is often why they don't want to move into those dark places, because they feel it so deeply.
Right.
It is a very hard thing for them to go through because it is so painful. And so going into those dark places, they don't want to feel stuck there, and they don't want to feel stuck in that pain because they feel it so deeply. So they're not callous.
You'll notice how, again, the movement from the coping style to your stress numbers, real interesting here, because there's going to be the positive outlook of the 7 of moving. But when that doesn't work, when there's a real break, the tools that are incorporated are the tools of the 1. And so there actually is going to be a looking at all the pieces on the board. I need to get things ordered so that I can get back to center and the adventurous, joyful self that I have. So the easy illustration in my mind of this is the 7 who's an alcoholic who realizes their life really needs to get systematized and figured out, and we need to put things in place, and these things need to be purged, and we need to throw away the trash. We need to get things ordered so that I can move back into a place where things are rolling again. It feels to me like relationally that can be the case as well. These things didn't work in the past. I'm going to get them figured out, ordered, kick out some bad habits. Here are the 12 bad habits I probably need to address. And then I'm moving back to center.
That would be a very healthy move, I would say, if they're doing that.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about on the less healthy end of the spectrum of the like picking up some of the rigidity and sort of criticism and blame, and almost in a way combining that with a little bit of that positive outlook. Like, this is all your fault, so I don't have to address it anymore.
Yeah. Interesting.
If that dialogue hit you, we did a fantastic set of episodes with the great Suzanne Stabile about a year and a half ago on stress, in which we talked about the high side of the stress number and the low side. So each of us, when we go to stress, we can go to stress in a very unhealthy way, or we can use our stress number as a tool in a very positive, reconstructing, building, moving us back forward way. And so we went through all the numbers with that high and low side in mind. We're really worth listening to that if you get into that material. Any other quotes on reciprocated love?
Yes. So the next 7 says, oof, it kind of crushes me, honestly. I always want everyone to like me, even if I don't like them. So if I'm rejected, I feel like a failure. I get through it by getting my friends to hype me up, or just wallowing in sorrow for a while and hating myself, LOL. But if it's not a serious thing, I usually am pissed that they don't like me, but I just try and distract myself with someone else. I like I'm mad that they didn't like me back. I need that energy in my life.
Wallowing in sorrow, LOL.
Yeah. BRB, wallowing in sorrow for just a minute. It's fine. I'll be back. Might delete later.
The language I heard was distract myself with someone else, where I was like, okay. There is, again, the move toward I'm not going to address this problem and maybe have to go through the hard process of really saying, what did this do to me? How do I move through this in a healthy way? I will simply find somebody else, and that will be sufficient.
Yeah. Also, just want to clarify my personal, from my perspective, laughing at that quote, I'm laughing with you. I'm not laughing at you.
Oh, yeah,
like,
for sure.
I love the energy from that. So I like it.
Yeah. What else you got?
So this next 7 says, I shut them out. I have a fairly tough exterior to protect my soft interior. To have a breakthrough, I have to be sure that there is a mutual desire for a relationship to happen.
Great example of feeling repression there.
Yeah.
And just shutting it off. Just saying, there's not a problem here. We're done.
And an opportunity to sort of justifying having one foot out the door.
Ooh, that's good. Yeah.
Is there something we didn't mention, this element of going to your stress number, but there's something that ones want, and that's control, and that 7s can have control in a different kind of way in terms of being ahead of the problem. But if you're really stressed out, the real move toward I'm going to grab hold of control. I don't know if that works there, but that's what I heard.
This 1/7 said, well, first they said, when I'm rejected, I usually don't take the hint. And then they said, but I tend to not open up until I know I won't be rejected. So there's the control element there of I'm not going to be vulnerable. I'm not going to open up until I know that this is a safe space.
We're only doing this on my terms.
Yes. Yeah.
Are all the aggressive types like that?
I would, that feels correct to me. I would say yes. But I think it's more than just the aggressive types.
I think so too. And I don't know that I would describe 3s that way.
I think they wouldn't open up authentically until knowing they won't be rejected.
That's what I was thinking also.
They might open up in ways that will elevate themselves, but not in the vulnerable, this is where I suck ways.
And I don't even know that it would necessarily be like on their terms. I think that 7s and 8s and some other types might not necessarily say it that way, but like they exert some kind of control over how they share themselves in that way. Like, I will let this part out of me when I feel safe. But I think 3s would be, it's more about them not being in touch with it in the first place.
Ooh,
Yeah, that's actually where I said it and then I kind of backstepped. There would be an assumption that aggressive types actually know how they're feeling, and that's not the case. That's actually where they're repressed.
I wonder with 7s and 8s as well, if it's also about the connection to 5, because they both have a connection to 5. And the 5 is very much the type to not be vulnerable until feeling safe, particularly. And even then, not being very vulnerable.
Right.
Bing. Any advice from the 7s for other 7s?
Okay. The first 7 says, it may be really hard to not be with that person all the time, and it may hurt and make you feel lonely. But it's okay to have some space, especially if your partner needs time to themselves. It doesn't mean they love you any less, and it's not something you should take personally. The next 7 says, you do you. Don't let love or lack of it hinder you. You are beautiful, independent, and strong, and don't need a single person to tell you that. And also, it's a waste of time to wish away moments of your single life waiting for someone to come along. Live life fully, alone or not. They had like a live life fully ... alone or not. The next 7 says, the world is full of people you're going to click with. But if you're like me, you have high standards for people who actually stay in your life. So if you feel like there's no one out there who you actually want to keep, it's not true. There is. Try and focus on who you have and building better friendships/relationships with them. The next 7 says, don't get caught up in a soulmate. There isn't a perfect answer to life, but make sure before you get married to make sure this is the life you want. The next 7 says, you have to love yourself first. It's impossible to give love when you can't love yourself. And the next person says, find your people, and from them, you'll find the one.
Kaleidoscopic
Yeah.
Yes.
7ness.
I was thinking a cornucopia of 7 responses.
It's true. I mean, they're all like the world is full of opportunity and people and great things. So don't get down. You'll find it.
It feels like there's a good representation of sort of 2 poles of a spectrum within a lot of these responses, whereas is one, like that first quote made me think of some of the 7s that I know that have a really hard time when other people don't want to do the fun things that they want to do. You know, like there's an element of connection there that they struggle with not being part of their lives. Whereas the other end of the spectrum is, don't worry about other people, you figure out you.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Lots of the advice I heard had everything to do with motive, and some of that was great advice, but some of it may not be the healthiest advice, is what I kept thinking. And I think it can be manic in the way that sometimes when you're a 7 that's hurt, you can get manic. The language of being hurt and lonely paired with live life fully. You know, one of the statements was don't get caught up in the idea of a soulmate. And obviously that is a place where you're trapped. This relationship is a trap, and you should spin the relationship in your head as just a trap that you avoided, you know? But that colors a lot of motive. It colors a lot of how the coping style works in terms of let's positively spin this.
I do think, though, on just that particular quote, that could be spun the other way as well, where they're right if they're saying soulmate type thinking is kind of a trap. Like, there's not just one fish in the sea out there for you. You could make it work with a lot of different people, and you could be very, very happy with a variety of different people. And so if you think that one person was your one chance and they rejected you, it's all right because there's other people out there that you could be very, very happy with.
That's a good clarification. I missed the back end. Notice here's sevens to talk about affect again are going to be idealists, and so there it is. It's let's be
That's
measured
true.
and thoughtful about how our ideals work when we connect with the world.
Yeah. I will say as well, coming from a 4, the advice I would give sevens is it is okay to feel the feelings, and it's okay to sit in those places. Even if you need somebody to sit in those places with you because it's scary, that's okay. That's fine. That's a completely normal response and feeling to have, that it's scary because it can be. But processing those feelings and those emotions will help you move on cleanly. And you won't be bringing this buried emotional baggage to other things. Like if you don't deal with it now, it will come out in other ways that are ugly later at people that were unrelated.
And if you don't have people in your life that can walk through this with you, like there are a lot of sevens who report that the people in their lives expect them to be the dancing monkey all the time.
Yep.
Like if you don't have people that can let you be sad, that's the problem you need to solve first.
Yep. Find a support group. There's tons of support groups as well. Facebook groups as well.
One of the most meaningful relationships in my life is with a 7, but we have a long distance relationship. And so I don't have that relationship with him in terms of ever asking him to be a jumping monkey. And what's real interesting is nearly every time he's communicating something to me that's hard, and he's got a very visible job, says, well, of course you can't tell this to anybody, but, and then the authenticity is just all over the next thing he's going to say because this is a safe space to not have to perform. 1. 2, he went through a terrible divorce 10 years ago, married to another 7, 2 sevens. What could go
Wow.
wrong?
That's a lot of energy in that relationship.
That wedding was amazing. She racked up a few $100,000 in debt. He spent the next couple years paying it all off when they got divorced. And that was, notice the one side here, that in getting his life put back together, one of the things he chose to do was to pay off the debt from his divorce. Very orderly, I'm going to get things under control so that I can move back into center. And that was his way of responding to rejected love. And that really was the situation. His spouse rejected him and then left him with all this debt. Really courageous move. It routinely strikes me as just incredibly admirable. But the orderliness there is, if you're looking to use your stress number to repair rejection, that might be, that's a good way to go, like going to the high side of 1.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that most sevens that are listening that are not going to be finding themselves in an exact same scenario, but that's also a really good example of something that he chose to keep in his life that would be a constant reminder. So like he couldn't just bounce. He couldn't just move on from
That's
that
a good call.
Really quickly. He chose something that would keep it present for him for years. So in a way, he chose a path that would force him to go through it.
Which is very wise.
Yeah. An unhealthy way of doing that, I suppose you can imagine somebody getting the credit card bill every month and, making fun of it. Look how much I know now, as opposed to doing the hard work of knocking that sucker out.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We'll move to the 8s.
Mm-hmm.
What do 8s do when their love is not reciprocated, Kambrie?
So I didn't get very many responses from 8s because they are just doing life. So I got one really good quote, and then I have some personal thoughts for another substitute of a quote. So this first 8 says, if it's not direct and I feel overall like there's a strain in our relationship, I'll usually get bored and move on. If I'm directly rejected, I'll take it and move forward. Rejection used to scare me a lot more, but as a former aspiring but ultimately unsuccessful theater kid, I got really used to rejection and I just sort of embrace it now. Which also sounds just it's a very 8, let's just keep moving forward type response.
And there's also not a lot of emotional sharing in that response.
I heard a lot of language of leverage there.
Ooh.
This doesn't have power over me. I am in control in this space, and I'm going to do what I want, which would be common, in terms of 8s not only wanting to be strong in the midst of a relationship going south. That would be just a natural defense. Probably that's the first card you play. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think on the flip side as well, when rejection is coming from somebody that they felt would not reject them / betray them or betray their feelings or betray the vulnerability that they had with that person, the rejection, first off, can feel just like that. It can feel like a betrayal rather than a rejection. But I think a lot of 8s might also feel a loss of control and that life is spinning out of control, especially if it was like a spouse that ends up rejecting them, where their whole life is kind of tied up in that person. It can feel like you don't have control over anything anymore. And so it might feel like complete chaos. And you just want to grab hold to something. You just want to feel in control just a little bit of something. And it just isn't happening. And that can be a really dark place.
Coping styles can be the same as 6s. They're going to want validation. But here it's not about fear. It's about their anger. If I imagine if an 8's very intimate with another person as a confidant, a lot of their anger towards the broken relationship is going to come out in their vocabulary. And the thing that they're going to really want is for the person in front of them to validate their anger. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a lot of attention to the fact they can't control the things out there. And if that doesn't work, the move for 8s is to withdraw. And they're going to enter 5 space where they can get their head around what happened with that relationship, with that broken relationship. Use tools at 5.
I wonder as well if so I know how we talked about the idea of this isn't going to affect me as kind of like a power control move. I wonder if part of it is also the fact that they expect to be rejected anyways. And so when it happens, they're like, yeah, I kind of figured anyways. So they have already hardened against that negative thing. And so they're kind of almost ready for it when it happens. It still hurts, but they at least were kind of prepared in a way.
Right. And they can often spin it as, I was expecting this, therefore I'm not hurt by it.
Yep.
Yeah. You can't be disappointed if you expect disappointment.
Yeah.
Which is false. Mm-hmm. Like it's not a good idiom.
Yeah, bringing in the affect here. Again, the way that 8s are going to connect with the world and with others is often by offering their strength. And there's something about leverage again there. Like, I'm the one who's strong. I'm offering you strength. If you don't want it, that's just fine. I really didn't expect it anyway. I'll go over here. Energy. And then it's moved a different place.
Yes. There's
the opposite side of that coin that's real similar to 7s in that you are feeling repressed. 8s are going to be naturally feeling repressed, and if they don't do the hard work of what it feels like when somebody else rejects you, then that's pushing into imbalance.
Mm-hmm. In fact, this other 8 said, and just to preface this, it feels like a lot of body type things, like they're responding to the rejection through movement in a way. So this 8 said, I feel broken, but I pray positive affirmations, use essential oils, and take feel-good supplements. So it's all of these doing, action-oriented type things, which actually
that's healthy.
That's not a bad thing, right? Because especially if you're pairing those things with, like, if you're tuning out noise at the same time that you're doing these things, you will allow yourself to process in the meantime. Like, if you can go for a walk or go for a run and you don't have music in or you don't have a podcast playing or something, and you're kind of just alone with your thoughts, but you're still moving your body, that can be a really safe place for you to process the feelings. Even music actually can be good because it can help you process feelings as well. But getting into your body is not a bad thing.
Yeah, an idea that's simmering in the back of my mind, and I'm sure it will come out at some point, is that all of us have energy, almost a primal energy that is filtered through us, and we have to take that energy and place it somewhere. The things for 8s in a broken relationship is a lot of that energy, the temptation to convert that energy into vengeance and retaliation will color a broken relationship. You hurt me and I will pound you into sand to let you know and everyone else know that this will never happen again is, I imagine, the immediate first move for a lot of 8s in their heart and in their desires, whether or not, if it's the case that 8 can convert it into, you know what, I'm going to go on a run, I'm going to use some essential oils, I'm going to get back in charge of myself and my future. Man, that's some healthy 8ness going on there, as opposed to how do I retaliate in the most aggressive way possible.
Right. Well, there's also like thinking about the emotional response of problem solving is going to be immediate for most 8s. It's we need to solve this right now. And skipping that step and going straight to the stress number and picking up some of the withdrawal there is actually not necessarily a bad thing.
Especially from a 9 who's looking at this.
Correct. Absolutely correct. I would much rather you go away and we talk about it calmly later. But that idea of instead of taking control of the situation, asserting my will to confront the person I'm having trouble with and to solve this problem right now, because they may not be in a space where they can deal with that. And it's entirely possible that I'm a little hot-headed and things aren't going to go well. Maybe it's a good idea for me to step back and go on a run and spend some time really thinking about it.
Know a lot of 8s who do, yoga, kickboxing, things of that sort that I'm going to use. Again, you have energy. The energy needs to go someplace. It can go into, massacring the person that just hurt you, or I can take this out on a yoga mat, in a healthy way. Any advice for 8s to other 8s?
Yes. So the first 8 says, sometimes it can feel discouraging to feel like you come off too strong for people, but it honestly can be a gift, so don't let it shake you up. That's who you are at your core. So if you feel like you need to restrain your personality in order to attract them, you're not going to end up very happy with them. You have the ability to lead in your relationship, and the right partner will embrace that instead of telling you to play it more cool. The next 8 says, try not to take it to heart. It's not about you. Not everyone likes the same flavor of tea. Some people like chamomile, and we're spicy rosé with a winky face, or spicy rose with a winky face. I love that. I would add, so that's what I have from 8s, but I would add, control is not the target. Getting control back is not the worthy target here. I think the worthy target would be finding ways to be more vulnerable with yourself and others that are really close to you, others that you feel safe with, and making those connections will help you move on in a better way. Maybe not I don't like to use the word better way, because then it kind of is like this is better than the other. Maybe in a more clean way. It can help you move on from it faster, possibly, by being vulnerable with yourself and others and processing it rather than retaliating.
and even help you actually move on.
Yeah.
As opposed to just cutting bait and running. Off mic, we were talking about power moves, like things that we do to sort of control relationships and environments around us. And like there is something about the taking the energy of the 8 and cutting off relationships and just leaving. There's that's a power move for 8. And that is a way to end relationships and to move on, to just ghost people and leave. But you might have an actual healthy ending if you're able to delve into some of the vulnerability involved there.
Mm-hmm.
That's also what I heard is a lot of these comments are doubling down on strength and doubling down on you expected rejection, and here's how you can strongly navigate this. I hear that in terms of the heart of it ain't. Prescriptive wise, I think that TJ and Kambrie are both right, that targeting your repressed center is actually where the work needs to be done, is really getting in touch with how you feel so that you can engage your innocent side, your soft-hearted, magnanimous side of contributing in that space is a great good. Secondarily, if you go into your stress number and really use those tools available at 5 to withdraw, to really self-assess, to be aware of where you come across strongly, and to moderate that. Your strength is a real asset when used in wise and constructive fashions. So that's, but you'll know that at 5. Like fives will be your 5 tools. You'll be able to observe yourself and be able to observe the world, and then you'll be able to act in productive relationship building fashions.
I would say as well, the idea of cutting the relationship off can be a good thing. It can be a healthy thing. It might be what's needed, especially if that relationship was toxic or it just wasn't good for you. However, there might be times where it is more wise to not throw the baby out with the bathwater, where there might be, if you repaired, it could be even better after. And sometimes people are dumb. Okay, not sometimes. People are just dumb. Like, people mess up all the time.
You don't have to tell eights that.
That's true. And I think sometimes after going through a bout of rejection or even perhaps betrayal, you could have a better relationship after dealing with that, after talking with them, talking it out. And if it seems that it might be a good move to keep the relationship, it could be really great. And I know that's scary, and that's okay.
Well, you got any thoughts for the 9s? What do 9s say about themselves when love is not reciprocated?
I have a lot for 9s. This first 9 says, I explain it away over and over to myself, rationalize, then ignore it until it goes away.
Everything's going to be fine.
That feels like a 6. It feels like a 6 move to me as well. The explain it away over and over to myself, rationalize portion.
I can also, if you'd like to know where that comes from in the heart of a 9, I'd love to enlighten
Do it.
Enlighten us.
It's an element. So because 9s are at the crown of the Enneagram, we see all the other types more clearly than we see ourselves. So when these kinds of things happen, we justify it in a explaining their side kind of way. We're playing that mediator role to ourselves,
Looking at their side of the story.
I find, because I have a wing here, I find that that's a control move for me. That if I can explain something rationally, it actually gives me power. And so if I can say this is why they're doing it, I can elevate, I can disconnect. There's the withdrawal in part. But that feels like I'm the one who is overseeing this situation kind of move.
Is it also a move of like, this is why I don't need to take it personally? Or do you not feel that?
I think it depends on how healthy I'm feeling that particular day. Because I think it is in part a way of helping me understand, like live in their shoes a little bit. But it's also a way of not addressing the actual problem. Like if you can explain the problem, then you don't necessarily have to address the problem.
Yep.
Interesting.
That's an isolated move. Yeah. This is about, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to talk about this to myself. You all aren't invited to my space, but I'm going to interpret this how I desire.
And this way we also don't have to have a fight about it.
Yeah, and that's what I mean.
Yeah.
That is a control move of I don't have to have a fight about this. Fighting is not going to be one of the plays that's an option for anyone in this scenario. Yeah?
Yep.
I'm taking that off the table.
That's the preference.
It's a control move that most nines will not agree to being a control move.
Yeah.
Because most nines don't want to see themselves as controlling.
Right.
Don't want to be controlled?
And also don't want to be perceived as being controlled.
Right. They want to be perceived as being the easy to get along with, simple, not too complex, not complicated. And so if you're controlling, that's complicated.
Right. And it also opens the door for conflict.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. What the 9 offers to others in relationship is here's the calm I'm going to bring. Here's the peace I'm going to bring. Here's the stability I'm going to bring.
Yeah.
That would be the opposite. Yeah. Any other quotes from 9s?
Yeah, I have a few more. So there's 2 quotes that are very similar. One says, act like nothing is wrong, then cry alone. And then it has the crying laughing emoji. And the next one says, isolate and listen to sad playlists, cry, pour my feelings out into writing. So the act like nothing's wrong in person, but
Would you,
yeah.
TJ, can you talk about crying alone? I've nowhere on my systems does that play into the heart of a 9. How would you talk about that?
It's part of that. I like how Kambrie said earlier that it makes things complicated. Crying in front of other people makes things complicated.
Oh, sure. Yeah. There it is.
Well, then also people are going to ask you what you're feeling and you might not know.
Yes. Or more importantly, you might not have the interest or capacity in. So it's also, I don't want to place my stuff onto your plate. And if I'm crying
because I don't want to take up space.
Yeah. It invites you and can also be seen as a manipulative move to invite you to ask me what's wrong. And it's easier to just, I'll deal with this by myself.
Man, we haven't talked about this. I bet you 8s, 9s, and 1s are hyper aware of when they use manipulation towards others, and they generally choose not to for 3 very different reasons. So that's real interesting. From my childhood, my beloved mother, who passed 3 years ago, who longtime listeners will know is a 9, divorced my dad when I was young. Ended up having a string of really unhealthy boyfriends in her life, one of whom cheated on her. And when her love and connection to this person was rejected, she kicked a hole in one of our walls that lasted for a couple of months. That hole was in the wall.
My gosh.
And my brother and I thought that she got angry at us. And in retrospect, I know exactly what happened and have huge sympathy, because if I was a little bit more mature and older, I could have spoken into that situation. However, 12-year-old Jeff was not capable of meeting her needs in that moment. But here's the thing about the 9, there is a tipping point, is there not, TJ, in terms of relational rejection hitting the spot, the anger is unleashed.
Yeah.
It's like a boiling pressure cooker.
Yeah.
At some point, it just pops.
And it's never in a good and appropriate way either. That's just not how it works. It's always in a kicking a hole in the wall in front of your, of your 12-year-old kind of way.
12-year-old and your 6-year-old whose eyes are wide, mouths are open, going, "What is happening?" How 12-year-old Jeff, the only thing in his head is, how do I make this better? Yeah. So if you would like to hear what my conversations on the couch sound like, the other side of this, the spurts of, how would you characterize the spurts from a 9? They are frantic, untied together, pure. It's raw. It's raw energy coming at you. when things break.
Yeah. Well, it's the opposite end of that element of control that we're talking about. It's when like we spend so much energy working to be in control of our emotions, to make sure that we're not a burden on other people, to be composed,
tempering.
So then when the real stuff comes out, it comes out raw because we haven't spent the energy on it to make sure it's appropriate.
Does that have anything to do with the move to 6?
Ooh, I would say, because the move to 6 entails dealing, I don't know. Because there's definitely the whole, I want to be heard. I don't know if it would be the move to 6 or if it's just this pent up thing. I think the move to 6 is more the worrying and over rationalizing and spinning thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Devoid.
Whereas this just seems, this seems more of a feeling, emotional release type thing. I think breaking point was a good word.
Yeah, and you can easily point to anger in different aspects of 8's lives. You can easily point to anger in different aspects of 1's lives, and it's not necessarily tied to stress or security even. And this is the place where anger exists for 9's.
So you can showcase explosive anger not in stress.
Yes. Yeah, because it's more about loss of control than it is about stress.
This needs to be earmarked for 9s, 8s, and 1s. That's the answer. You just gotta know that about your underlying feeling. It's about the lack of control. A lot of the answers from 8s earlier, it's just about lack of control in a relationship. Mm-hmm. You can't control other people, and relationships are all about other people.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and I think it's a compounding loss of peace, a compounded loss of harmony. Mm-hmm. If there's too many things, there's too many situations or too much loss of peace, like there's a threshold.
Yeah.
And once you've met the threshold, then all hell breaks loose.
Yeah. And I think stress can play a role there, but I don't think they're tied together.
Yeah.
I think stress lowers the threshold, honestly.
Yep. That checks out.
I don't know what you mean.
Being in stress, the distance between my ability to sort of like maintain and where everything breaks, that distance is smaller when I'm in stress.
The fuse is shorter.
Oh, I see. Sure. That makes sense. Do you have any other quotes, Kambrie?
I do. I have one more. So this last 9 says, it hurts like a lot. I think, did I do or say something wrong? I end up worrying over stuff like that. If I get rejected, I try my best to move on, even when it hurts like hell. But I do get really sad at first. You hear the move to 6 there as well. They say that they're worrying about stuff. It sounds like there's these churning, worrying thoughts going on.
Yeah.
Of, did I do or say something wrong? Did I cause this? Is this my fault?
Thing I hear there, we talked about this in previous podcasts, is that 9s receive love through their physicality. And when they say it hurts like hell, that's about their intuitions and how they receive love. Yeah. And so just to put a name on that 9s who are listening, you need to receive love in your intuitions. And so when it's not reciprocated, it ends up being a very physical experience.
Right.
Well, I think it also ties back to motive, where 9s, or I guess fear, where 9s don't want to lose relationships. They don't want to lose connection. And so losing that connection is a very visceral feeling. It hurts a lot.
Yeah, well said.
Because that matters a lot to them, to have relationships.
We haven't brought that in. This is something TJ and I talk about a lot in terms of the fear of 9s, of feeling like everything's falling apart or disconnection. That certainly is about relationships, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all relationships. It's especially the ones that are close, because there's you already know how these works, and there's less danger with the ones that are close because you understand it and you know how it works and you know how to keep it calm. And I think that's part of where that positive outlook really plays a role in this discussion. Is that like we don't want to face that so much that we're going to pretend like it doesn't exist.
The thing I also hear in your language there is that's your affect as well. You're going to connect with the people who are going to maintain some sense of stability and calm.
Right. Mm-hmm. And because that connection exists in certain places, we're going to double down on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I really appreciate about TJ in my life, especially as a business partner, is TJ has a huge radar for who's going to be a problem. I don't. I'm an idealist. I walk into all relationships thinking this is going to go great. I'm going to be able to move them into places that are amazing. This person is clearly, a meth addict. The face tattoo is kind of disturbing, but I bet you they're going to do a great job being a stable employee.
Nope.
And TJ,
nope, it's not going to happen. Sorry, they're going to be good for about 2 weeks. Just the reality of it.
They're just being authentic with the face tattoo. Come on.
I'm not. I won't say I'm not against face tattoos, but it's not the thing that makes me concerned. It's a pattern of behavior.
Got any more quotes from the nines? Are we moving towards advice?
Moving towards advice, yeah. So I realize I didn't say this for all of the other types, but these sections of advice can go for all types. They are geared toward the section, like that type section. So like these ones that I'm going to say are geared towards nines. However, if it resonates and it's helpful, take it in. You don't have to be a 9 for this to be helpful. So this first 9 says, it's not because you're not enough. They were not right for you. The next 9 says, time is our greatest healer and worst enemy. A little philosophical there. The next one says, their rejection isn't indicative to your worth or value as a human or a partner. The next one says, take it slow. It's okay to daydream, but come back down to reality with a physical activity like meditation, yoga, running, or something else that gets you out of your head. Go to therapy. 2 exclamation points. The next one says, let yourself feel the pain. Don't try to numb it. Wallow in it. The next one, if you get rejected, it'll hurt. It's inevitable unless you've never really fallen for someone. But don't let that hurt consume you. You're more than whoever you fall in love with, and you're going to be okay without them. One day you'll realize that being alone is okay. And maybe one day you'll finally find someone, that true someone to spend the rest of your life with. The next one says your feelings and desires are equally as valid as your partner's. The next one, love is a choice and a commitment. Try to stay present during hard conversations and share your thoughts and feelings. The next one, you're worth more than their negative opinions about you. And the last one, losing someone you love doesn't mean you are alone or that you have lost yourself.
Can I speak to this real quick? Because you're going to summarize this better than I do, TJ. I did not expect this when we prepped the podcast. The way that advice is offered is so... It's such a great window into the perspective of these types. Mm-hmm. The advice oftentimes can be great and it can be trash. It very much is coming out of the motive of these types. You hear positive spin all over the place in these quotes. You hear the fear of things breaking apart and disconnection in these quotes. There is a very physical orientation to these quotes of you need to feel the pain. That is coming out of the heart of a 9, and most of us may not know that that's what's in the heart of a 9, but that is a very physical way of engaging the world. All perspectives are equally valid, etc. It's just worth naming as we're talking about how each of us in our type experience rejection, that our Enneagram filters that. in being able to name how our Enneagram type filters rejection really matters in terms of asking, here's the big question for us. Is it healthy or unhealthy? Really, there's nothing bigger than that. There's going to be all sorts of advice that we get from all sorts of different people. Rejection in love is one of the hardest things that we endure. And so in that hardest of hard places, the only question in that place that oftentimes we feel so broken, the question is, what does it look like for me to be a healthy person in this space that's so difficult? That was my take. You got thoughts?
I was also thinking about how much of that advice is geared toward helping people get through in a peaceful kind of way.
Yep.
It's like
It's going to be all right.
It's so much is very soothing kind of advice.
Yep. Notice how different it was from the 8s.
Yeah, which was
that's true.
basically like it's not your problem, it's theirs. Let's move on.
Yeah.
It's soothing, connective advice. Their perspective matters. It's equally valid. 8's not going to say that.
Right.
Two very different ways to get control in the situation when you just got hurt by somebody that you cared about.
I'll say as well, a lot of this advice is very generous because it is supposed to be phrased at somebody else. And I think it would be very helpful if these same people took their own advice. And I hope that they do. I hope that they talk to themselves this way because it's a very kind way to speak to yourself. Like telling a 9, you're worth more than that other person's negative opinions about you. Your feelings and desires are equally as valid as your partner's. Like I really hope that these 9s that wrote these are taking that into themselves as well because it's true. I mean, that honestly, that was really great advice from my standpoint that you have you're valid too. You can take up space. You're worth more than that. You're worthy of love kind of postures.
A lot of good emotional wisdom.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
It also, I found as well, kind of with what Jeff was saying, where it speaks a lot to their experience as a 9 with love. I heard a lot of merging where it's like, if you lose this person, you haven't lost yourself. And like losing the relationship, you don't lose you kind of language, which I thought was also really interesting.
Yeah, addressing some of the element of that fear of separation where it's like it's not just that this person left, but it's like I lost an arm.
Yes. Yeah. And in that case, the 9 that has felt rejected and the 9 that's going through this loss of relationship and this rejection is going to need to spend some time figuring out who they are. And that is a good thing.
Yeah.
I'm hesitant to talk about this, but at some point, I know that TJ and I will do a series on grief, and a lot of the same themes are going to come up. I hadn't thought about that as we're discussing all of the types that I imagine that there's a real common. I imagine there's a very similar emotional experience between rejected love and the loss of somebody that you care about, in terms of how you process that internally.
Right. I think because it's not the same thing, but it is the same experience for the one who's left. It's like someone that I had a loving relationship with is not there anymore, either because they chose to leave or they passed away.
Yep. I hate to say that brings us to the 1s, but that's where we're going.
Got to segue somehow.
Tell me what the 1s say, Kambrie, about when love isn't reciprocated.
The first one actually fits well with the somber mood. They say at the very beginning, trigger warning, eating disorders, OCD, and anxiety.
Woo! Come on.
So they say, I've been in a safe, strong, healthy marriage for almost 10 years, but concerning past rejections before years of therapy, this is how they dealt with this. They say, restrict and grab for control in any way I can. clean, organize, fix, correct, and control every imperfect aspect of my life. This was often counterproductive and led to self-destructive choices.
Dear listener, if that was you, I love you. That just resonates with my soul, and I see you. Anything else worse? You want to just talk about that quote for the next 30 minutes?
I mean, what we've been talking about with the 8s, 9s, and 1s about control, here's very, very clearly. I mean, they even stated it themselves, restrict and grab for control in any way I can. A very aware standpoint on it as well.
Yeah, one's like their move in problem solving is to solve problems competently. Let's divorce emotion out of this, and let's figure out what the right thing to do is, and move forward, and
let's fix it. And if
so,
they can't fix that, they'll try to fix everything else in their life.
Right. So doubling down on what needs to be fixed, and just like working extra hard to fix everything.
Mm-hmm.
This is I know this so internally that I don't know if it needs to be said. Is actually what goes through my mind, but I bet you it does. The reason that the one struggles with an eating disorder is because that's something they can control immediately.
Exactly.
And notice how much that is about themselves. Mm-hmm. I can do this immediately, and it's about improving myself in whatever standard I have. So I know in times of stress for myself, I don't have an eating disorder. When I get stressed out, I start working out in very aggressive ways. So I'm training for a marathon, is what goes through my mind. I bet you I can run 15 miles in the next month. It's entirely about taking energy. We talked about energy earlier. You have all this energy. Things are going badly in the world. You can't connect with the people that you want to connect with. How am I going to use this energy in a way that moves the ball forward? For me, time to run a marathon. and that's as much of a hit to my system as heroin is to the heroin addict. So we've talked about a very, very famous illustration of this comes from Richard Rohr, who wrote one of the first books on Enneagram in terms of his own oneness. When things aren't going well, he's going to clean his bathroom. Right. That man's a heroin addict. I don't care that he's in the ministry. Just know that, my friend, is mainlining what his Enneagram type needs.
Right.
Without the moral dimensions, obviously. But it is
an entirely appropriate way to express his.
Well, it might be or it might not be. I mean,
I wish that's how I dealt with it. My house would be so clean.
Yeah. If
my house is a mess.
Not clean his bathroom, that's a problem.
Well, let me float it to you too. Is it healthy for the one to begin aggressively shaping some element of their life, pouring their energy into that space because that's how they're wrestling with that over there? You know what I mean?
So I think this is a good place to draw a distinction between something like I'm going to start working out 3 times a day and I'm going to go clean the nonsense out of my bathroom. Because at a certain point, your bathroom is clean. Mm-hmm. And you also know that your bathroom will become unclean again. So like it's not if you approach the idea of just fixing something, like say cleaning a bathroom, from the perspective of knowing that you have to get this out now. So within this example, this is a way for him to gain control over something now. He just goes and he cleans his bathroom. And then he can sort of move on from that need. But if you're approaching it in a, like, the bathroom has to always be clean all the time and I'm never going to let other people use it because it always has to be clean, that's a problem. If you're approaching it in a, I'm going to start working out 3 times a day with no end in sight, I'm going to start running a marathon, but I'm not actually training for a marathon kind of approach. Like it's a release without any kind of, I don't want to say structure to it because structure is also part of oneness, but I think it's a release without a purpose.
Yeah.
Or direction.
Quick note. I've never thought about this before, but it may be the case that we need to put a name to the healthy ways to use that energy that we all have, regardless of type, in ways that aren't going to really do harm to ourselves or others. So we talked about yoga and kickboxing for 8s. I'm sure that we could say that, around the circle with all the types. For 1s, there can be I'm at least going to bring order to this one space, not because that has any value. It's because you need to pour that energy into something in this moment, or else you'll do damage to yourself or to others. I hate that that's how humanity is. That just is how humanity is. You have energy, and it either is going to go into something really dumb, or it's gonna blow up. Am I wrong there?
No. I was going to say a lot of it depends on intentionality. And if you are doing it with the intention of, I know that I'm grasping for control right now. I know that this is what's going on for me, and I'm choosing to deal with it in this way to get it out of my system so that I can go back and repair without hurting myself or others. Obviously in healthy ways. So the whole exercising 3 times a day would not be a healthy way to express this, or restricting diet, things like that, over restricting. Whereas, it's the idea that same thing with 8s, that control and 9, control is not the right target. That's what you're wanting, but it might be empty when you find it.
Yep.
Like if you're grasping for control, and if you go order your bathroom or you go clean your whole house or whatever, is that actually going to fix how you feel? Are you going to actually feel in control? Like, is it a worthy target or not? Is it actually going to do what you want it to do? You know what I mean?
A lot of the types have a perfect storm place where all the negative elements of their type come together in one point. And one of the things that needs to be known is that 1s feel judged by everyone else, and it doesn't matter if other people actually are judging them. They feel like they're being judged, and they're obviously judging themselves. Eating disorder is a great example of how the one who struggles with this probably believes that everybody thinks about their weight. And here's the thing, nobody cares about your weight, but you do, because that's the focus of something that you think you might be able to improve in how you see yourself in the world.
What one person might have talked about.
Yeah.
Like one person might have said that, and that stuck with you because it was a traumatic comment about something you were insecure about.
Exactly right. And that person isn't worth listening to. And that person's opinion doesn't matter. And you need to know that person's opinion doesn't matter. This last week had a review from my employer that was scathing, drafted probably in the span of 15 minutes, and completely uninformed about my performance, how I come to my job, and things that I think about obsessively. And my response to that, and because I have a graduate degree in arguing about things, was like, I could be as specific and passionate, and I will bring nuclear fire to this conversation, as anybody on the planet. But that's not what it's actually about. What I need to know is that as a healthy 1, my obstacle isn't that person. My obstacle is feeling like I'm being judged. And I have to name that every single day. They don't care about the thing that you care about, It's just not that important to them. You feel judged because that is a place of real unhealth, and you need to name it and get rid of it. Nobody's judging you. And you certainly don't need to abuse yourself.
Yeah, the obstacle is yourself in a lot of those cases, because you're the one that is, it's the whole saying of like, if you point one finger at me, there's 4 or 3 fingers or 4 fingers pointed back at you.
Mm-hmm. Depending on whether you're a cartoon character or not. Sorry, I couldn't help you.
Hands are hard to draw, okay?
But 1's being rejected in a relationship, we don't wrestle with it like the 8 does, where we can quickly say, well, of course they're an idiot, and we stabilize.
Right.
Man, we're going to obsess over everything, every little event that we perceive went badly on our part, and dissect that sucker 8 times to find the root. Did I really do that poorly? Because it was probably my fault that this relationship failed.
And that's what's going on the inside, right?
Yeah.
That's not being forecast to the outside. The outside is probably going to come across as, your loss, it's fine. I don't care, right?
Well,
Depends.
I
Probably depends on the one.
And I think that this desire to gain control of something, it's like the eating disorder comes out in this place because obviously there's something wrong with me.
Yep.
That needs to be fixed.
That's the energy.
Yeah. And not necessarily even the eating disorder, but there's something wrong with the universe which caused this relationship to break. Therefore, I need to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a measure of both. I'm trying to fix the thing that got in the way of that relationship. I wasn't attractive enough, and therefore, this is how I'm going to consume calories. But there's also anger there. Ones have an underlying feeling of anger, and that can be taken out on themselves. Mm-hmm. Where it's the opposite. You can see it in 8s. 8s take out their anger on the world. Imagine how that looks if the target shifts from the world out there that you see when 8s get really angry and just unleash. The opposite is true of 1s. We take our anger and we just unleash on ourselves when we're in our most unhealthy. Mature,
And it's probably the same amount of anger. Like if you feel that 8s are very, very outwardly intense and angry, remember that that's also happening on the inside of 1s.
It's entirely
just
right.
as intensely.
So you see, like, if you look at somebody like who's even a healthy 1, if you look at somebody like Gandhi, what Gandhi does to try and stabilize his country is he fasts for 35 days and says, I'm going to die if you guys don't get your act together. That is so physical. Mm-hmm. And it's, if only I were good enough, everybody else would get their act together kind of posture towards the world. Mm-hmm. To go back to the quote, eating disorders, cleaning, control, I'm focused on myself. This is how we are processing broken relationships. And we just need to name how it's healthy to use that energy and how it's unhealthy. That was a long way to get to that concluding point. What else you got, Cam?
So there's another quote that actually goes right along those same lines where they say, I try to love anyway and to, quote unquote, lose myself in working on my own goals and spirituality, which that brings up another thing. There is such a thing as spiritual scrupulosity. It's like a version of OCD, but with spirituality. So it's this obsessive need to pray or fast or do all of these things, which can actually be the opposite of spiritual. It can be very damaging. It's very self-sabotaging.
What I hear there is that all the types have a temptation. 5, 6s, and 7s, I am what I possess, relationally, asset-wise. 2s, 3s, and 4s believe I am what other people say about me. There's a very much my value is based in what I see in the mirror, and the mirror is other people. But for 8s, 9s, and 1s, our value is found in what we accomplish and what we do. And so if I say, I'm going to work on myself, I'm going to have a chart on the wall. This is what my weight is. This is how much I bench press. This is how many miles I can run. This is how big my bank account is. This is the progress I've made up the corporate ladder. Whatever that looks like, that's identity. And it's in temptation.
Yeah.
I also think that like going the spiritual route, I think that particularly based on my experience in the Christian church, that ones will also face this really interesting juxtaposition of being told that like you can't improve yourself, so here's all the work that you should do. Like that spiritual scrupulosity. I love this concept of like especially thinking about a 1 who thinks that this is the way that they earn their favor with God, is by doing all of these things correctly, and especially doubling down on that in a time of relational distress, of seeing that this thing didn't go well. Obviously, I'm not being a good enough Christian or whatever. And leaning, like, it's the same thing as picking up an eating disorder, just through an entirely different medium.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's the opposite of what you need at that moment. If you are hurting, the thing that you actually need when you're hurting, you need nourishment. You need calm. You need rest. You need, if you believe in God, you need to believe that God loves you unconditionally, not have the negative filter of, these are all the reasons why I'm not good. In God's eyes, it needs to be, these are all the reasons why I am.
Right.
And these are all of the good things. You need to feel those good things in those moments of pain and hurt. Mm-hmm. And that's what will actually do the healing.
Right.
To push one step further, we haven't brought up the stress move, but the stress move for ones is real powerful, and it needs to be embraced at a high level. And it's, you move to 4, you need to become introspective. You need to become introspective in a sense of, here's my identity, here's my calling, this is the good I bring into the world, and you need to set all the other stuff aside in terms of other people's judgments. If you move to 4, other people's judgments aren't necessarily primary. Your own judgment about yourself is what's primary, and that's a refuge for you. You say to yourself, here is who I know myself to be in the world, and you have to withdraw into that space and remain there as long as you need to. But that is, and the rest actually is super important, because it's moving away from your stance. Your stance is earning. Ones earn what they desire most, which is control. You think you're going to control the world by earning it, and that's why you have that's why eating disorders can be very common for ones, or any other disorders that have that kind of element to them in terms of self. What would you call that?
Flagellation.
Yeah. I mean, it's
that's a good word.
The abuse that you wrought on yourself. Move out of that space. You got to move out of 1 space, because you're in stress. So move into your 4
Stop
space.
beating yourself up.
Yeah. And what that looks like is you elevate in your stress number. This is why it was a huge misstep to think about stress numbers as being negative. They are absolutely primary to you getting healthy. Ones need to move into 4 space, and that looks like you being very introspective and reminding yourself of your identity, your calling, the good you bring into the world, naming that, writing it down. You need to get out of your house. You need to get out of your city. You need to go somewhere else where you can retreat. And that is oftentimes what ones routinely, the healthiest ones will communicate that over and again. The most important thing they do as a spiritual rhythm is they leave. And that's about going to the high side of 4 to remind themselves who they are.
Well, and processing. Processing the emotion is huge there.
Yep.
In fact, so 2 of these ones talk about, I mean, it is a move to 4, whether they realize or not. And sometimes the move to 4 is not always a healthy move.
Yeah, it's high side, low side.
Yeah, right. So this first one says, I withdraw, distract myself with entertainment or moody music. And that's where it can kind of go sour, is the distract part, where it's okay to withdraw and it's good to process and it's good to deal with those emotions. The moody music, great. It's a good move if it helps you process. However, if it's merely a distraction, then again, it's like, what's the target here? If the target is healing, you're in a good spot. But if the target is avoiding, it's not.
Let me elevate all day long. Moody music is a great outlet for your energy. Your energy is about, you have anger, and you're going to be tempted to use that at yourself. Moody music allows you to get into your emotional core and to get introspective. And a lot of times people have already walk down that path in very vibrant, colorful ways that you can, reflect. And so I got 12 Spotify playlists. It's go time. I'm gonna engage these. That's not an unhealthy move for me.
No.
That's a very healthy move for me. So
this other quote that kind of goes along the same lines of the move to 4 in a different way. They say, usually I get bitter after sadness because I put so much into a relationship and feel slighted that others are not willing to do the same. Eventually find people who are faithful and good friends no matter what. But it's this bitter after sadness. It's the resentment, which I guess is actually very much a one thing.
Yeah.
Feeling slighted that other people are not putting as much into it as you are.
And it is very much a one move to what happens when you don't earn the thing, but you did everything right.
Yeah.
I don't understand how that's not like everybody's framework for coming to the world.
Because there's 9 types.
That is
Yeah.
so grounded. That is so grounded in who I am in terms of relationships. It's befuddling to me. And so it's a healthy thing to name that. I don't have anything else to say there. That I thought that quote was perfect.
If we want to move to the feel-good aspect of
Give me some
what
advice.
can help, the advice from ones to ones about love and feeling rejected. This first one says, you are not always the problem. You will always be, quote unquote, too much or too little for some people. But there is good in you. You deserve someone who reminds you of the good in you when you lose sight of it. The next one says, you're not necessarily flawed because that person didn't want you. The next one, if rejected, take some time to sit with your feelings, deal with them, then do what you can to get on with life. The next one, it is okay to only have a handful of people you love that really understand you. Pursuing love we're not reciprocated through you may want to be friends with a person isn't bad, isn't worth it if they do not put in the same effort. It will lead to heartbreak. The next one, it's really scary to be known for all of you, the good parts and the bad parts. But when someone sees you for who you are and chooses you anyway, it's so worth all the scariness it took to get there. Plus, most people are more forgiving of you than you are of yourself. As for feeling rejected, you just have to remember it's not a reflection of whether you're a good or bad person, even though that's hard to do sometimes. The next one, don't try to be, quote unquote, perfect in order to be lovable. Accept that you are lovable exactly how you are and just be yourself. The right person will love you for you.
I feel like I'm going to be a broken record here that all of those claims end up pouring out of the perspective of a specific type.
Yeah, agreed. But I also think it's a lot of really good advice for ones that oftentimes ones will struggle to hear.
Yeah.
Because like
Ooh,
the one,
do you think this is good advice?
I think a lot of it is
I
really
think it's
good
great
advice.
advice. Yeah.
Come on. All right.
'Cause, like one of the things that I heard over and over again was it's okay to move on. It's okay to not need to fix this.
Mm-hmm. And that it's not a reflection of you
Yes.
and your goodness
Yep.
if they reject you.
Yep.
I think ones need to hear that. Need to not only hear that, but feel that.
Yep.
Stuff I heard there's the heart's message is clearly in a lot of this language that you are good and you need to hear that you're good. There's an invitation to action in some of it. Do what you can was one of the phrases. Notice how that pours out of the heart of a one to another one, that there's an action orientedness.
But it was, to give them credit, it was after saying, take some time to sit with your feelings and deal with them. Then do what you can to get on with life.
That was, I suppose, I hate to say this in terms of, like, contrary to a lot of the other types, I do think that there's some perspective here. There's an elevation of your stress number that actually was real healthy in the way that you're articulating. You need to get some space. That's a withdrawn move. Mm-hmm. It's move into your 4, get those tools. There was another phrase there that's, surround yourself with those who see you for what you are. That's all 4. People who understand you. That's all 4.
And it's okay for everyone. Like, it's okay to only have a select few people in your life that truly understand you. Not everybody can.
Yep. I think 2s and 5s are the most difficult numbers to understand. I could very well be convinced that from the perspective of others, 1s are actually not understood in terms of how their internal life actually churns. 1s put off a face they don't see it.
Yep.
So when people articulate to me, this is how you come across, I'm like, well, what universe are you living in? Here's the thing I said. This is what I did. I have absolutely I have no idea how people drew that conclusion.
It's true. Well, in my interactions with some 1s, this is not with everybody. There's some 1s in my life come across as very, very rigid and very this whole unforgiving of others type mentality. And I have to constantly remind myself that what they're saying says a lot about them. And that's how they deal with themselves. And that's what they're feeling about themselves. And it is hard because it comes across so different. And it does come across in this way that can be very off-putting and it's hard to remember what's going on the inside for them because they might not be saying that. They are, but in an indirect way.
And there's just so much that happens internally that they're not going to share with the world because it's inappropriate or messy or they're trying to earn something from you, not get you to fix them, you know?
I will say as well, Jeff, I do not see you that way. Just so you know.
I'm gonna own that.
Really, like I see you as one of the most emotionally vulnerable 1s that I know. And I see that as a real strength.
I wonder I think that has a lot to do with my subtype. I would be curious. I think that I'm the counter type for 1s.
It's a sexual one.
I may be in the minority. 1s, I imagine, from my experience, our principles and ideals and standards are so clear to us. They never get articulated. I don't need to tell you that gravity exists. Why would I need to tell you gravity exists? That's how things are. It's almost identical.
Right. It's like, why do I need to spell it out when it's so clear to me?
Yeah. So when I do work in the various places I do work, I routinely misstep here in terms of simply doing the groundwork of saying, here are things that matter to me that I would like you to see. I would like to elevate their importance because it may not be intuitive. That work very seldom gets done, and I don't understand that other people aren't there. I don't understand that people don't want good things in the world, that they are generally self-focused. I think nearly all humanity is self-focused, and I don't know that. That's just so foreign to how I come to the world. That's not necessarily a virtue for me, because I want to get things that I care about. So there is a self-focus there, but it is a foreign territory for me sometimes to see how quote unquote selfish some human beings are, because I don't get that. And that's not necessarily a virtue. It's actually a huge hindrance to me functioning well in the world.
That's why you need people around you who are automatically suspicious.
That's why I'm going to go run 15 miles right now.
Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
Friends, we have talked quite a bit. It's probably time to put a pin in this. We should probably hang on for the next time. Friends, it would mean the world to us if you took 2 seconds and gave us some stars and a review on your podcasting platform of choice. I want to specify, TJ, you know what?
What?
We still have double the stars of one Suzanne Stabile and Ian Cron. Just for now, just like for the listeners we have, you are small but mighty. just staying ahead of the curve. So we're way behind on iTunes, but Spotify. Just for fun.
Chugging along.
Here's the thing. Let's just do this as an experiment. Just give us stars on Spotify just because it's funny to look when you look at the other Enneagram podcasts. It will at least entertain us, and actually it feeds my ego.
So don't give stars on iTunes
Or if you're only
any
going to do
other
one.
platform.
If you're only going to do one. Actually, you can do both. But
Do them all.
It's one of those things that we're so far behind on iTunes, we're just apparently never going to catch up.
Right.
You can find all the links to all of our stuff at aroundthecircle.org. Kambrie, you got work that you're doing. It's amazing
I
work,
do.
in fact.
Thank you.
Where can they find your stuff?
I am predominantly on Instagram for the moment. So the moniker or the handle is enneagram.cam with Kam. And I actually, as you can tell, I do a lot of research. So if you want to participate in polls and surveys, those are usually on my story and I save them in a highlight. So if you participate in those, I will be forever grateful because it is very helpful.
Don't be deceived. For those who are in the Enneagram community, Kambrie is a hub of fantastic activity. One of the real high points in a world of buffoonery, and well worth finding. Even if you have not yet gotten into Instagram, it's worth just going for her stuff. That's right. I said it. World of buffoonery, Instagram.
I mean, it's not. You're not wrong.
You can find all the links to all of TJ and I's stuff at aroundthecircle.org, which includes Patreon, which has 11 participants. But here's the thing. If you actually enjoy our stuff and you want to support it, that's the place to do it. If you want to get into our extra material, and if you want to financially support the work here, that's where we take our $12 paycheck. It's just enormous. But TJ, you know this. Best thing that people could do is do what?
Share it with someone that you love.
Come on. Preferably somebody who just broke up with you and needs to figure out how their Enneagram type is coming to this dysfunctional relationship.
This might be a way to help bridge that gap, start that conversation.
That's true.
Yeah.
If you want to get back together.
You handled this way. I handled it this way. It's just entirely predictable.
Please do not tell them that they're predictable, especially if they're a 4.
Probably sage advice.
Kambrie Ross, it's always a pleasure to have you.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you guys for having me.
TJ, you got anything else?
I got nothing.
He's TJ Wilson. He's officially awesome. She's Kambrie Ross. She is inimitable. See how sticky that sounds, Kambrie?
It is. And every time you say it, I have to remind myself what it means because it's like not a word that I am super familiar with.
I'm Jeff Cook. Who you aren't isn't interesting unless you don't have it inimitable tattooed on your forearm.